months after its initial release, Redfall has just received a 60 frames per second upgrade for Xbox Series consoles. And we're going to be producing a video on it because we think it's worth taking a look at. Oliver's taking point on that. And, I guess it's kind of required at this point because there's lots of reports online about concurrent players for Redfall being at an all-time low. Oliver has taken, as I said, Oliver's taken a quick look at it so far. John, do you want to talk us through what we can disclose so far?
Basically, it does look like they have indeed fulfilled the promise this time. 60 frames per second is here. It works. Oliver's been doing most of the look at this, though, and based on his testing, it actually seems like it not only is 60, but it's actually a consistent 60, which is actually slightly unexpected, to be honest. But clearly they poured a lot of, the amount of work that must have gone into making this work as well as it does is impressive, I would say. Just because we know what a feat it is to get a game that's an Unreal game that was targeting 30 on these consoles, and then suddenly it's aiming for 60 if that wasn't the initial target. That's a big ask. That takes a lot of optimization work. And it seems like they've gotten there. And now they seem to be using a reconstruction method for getting the output of the system now. Whereas I can't remember.
I think it was native most of the entire time.
I think it was actually native 4K, right? Which that's obviously going to be way too expensive to do at 60 on a console, and they are apparently not doing that anymore. And in fact, Oliver seems to think that they're doing reconstruction in the 30 FPS mode as well. So image quality might be worse now, arguably, but you do get smoother performance, because even at launch you could get the frame rate to drop under 30 whenever there was a lot of fire on screen, if you recall. So native 4K, not the best choice in many cases on these consoles, I would say. Even though it looks nice, it's a lot to ask. It does sound though like the traversal stutters are still there.
I noticed
which I'm not surprised by.
On PC, by the way, just so everyone knows. Yeah, because when Oliver was doing the lead up to doing starting his testing, I did since I have all my legacy content saved for every video, I have CPU tests back from the day, and I loaded it up, and it's basically now when you do for scenarios, it's 50% faster when CPU limited, which means they did a whole lot of reduction of something that was bubbling up the CPU time in the game, incredibly. It was so CPU limited when the game launched, and that's probably the reason why the Xbox was limited to 30 FPS. It wasn't really they're just playing at 4K because they can.
Right.
It was all about the CPU, most likely, based upon what we saw on PC. Right. So I'd say that goes a long way to explaining how they did it. I'm just very curious, what if, it took this amount of time. And it makes you wonder, is this a situation where they really should have just delayed the game almost, beyond when it currently was? Because, it launched, beyond the quality of the game itself, which is very much more subjective. But a lot of people were talking a lot about the negative aspect of a first-person shooter being 30 FPS and how it doesn't feel right. We're not used to this. We don't want to do this anymore. We're not playing PS4 games anymore. Do you think they could have just delayed the game? And should have delayed it to get the better reception?
I think you really need to keep in mind the state that Xbox was in earlier this year, right? They basically had released almost nothing in 2022 outside of some smaller titles. And there was a lot of buildup heading towards this year, right? But then Starfield and Forza were still months away. I think they just needed something.
Oh God!
They needed to get out the door. I think in retrospect it was a mistake for Arcane
really
specifically. Yeah. But if they had released, say, Redfall now in October or something, right?
It would be more thematic.
It would have gotten no attention.
Yeah,
I think very little attention, because it would have. It's just there's too much stuff coming out now. And so I fear it would have hurt them in a different way.
Yeah, it was just such a negative press.
2024.
I don't know.
I feel like they just fundamentally missed the target on terms of getting it out during a window where they needed it. And now at this point, any later than that, and it's just going to land in the middle of other bigger games. And it's such a tough. I feel so bad for those guys.
Yeah,
you can see that there was love poured into that game, but it just didn't hit. And you're right. At launch, it was such a mess.
Yeah, it's just kind of endemic of a lot of the releases we've seen this year that release kind of in a really half-baked state, even on multiple platforms. I mean, I always complain about PC, but it's like we've seen this year with like Jedi Survivor and other games.
Jedi's still the worst.
Jedi, yeah, obviously, but like we've seen with other games that a lot of like games are released kind of in a beta state and then they're fixed over a number of patches. And I would now definitely include Redfall in that.
Oh, big time.
So I played it again on PC. I was not very happy to see the traversal stutters still being there, but at least now, based upon what I saw, it seems like a Ryzen 5 3600 would be able to get up to 60 FPS with moderate setting changes. So that's a good positive thing, you know, like with Jedi Survivor, I can't necessarily say that still, even at like the lowest settings, but with Redfall, it seems like you should be able to get a good 60 FPS minus the traversal stutters, at least now with a mid-range PC.
Another thing to mention is that, and Oliver will show this in more detail, two of the big things I mentioned in my Redfall video were the texture loading problems and the shadow problems. Do you guys remember that?
Of course, yeah.
Like the shadows and textures were, so like you'd have like a texture, all the high-res decals, for instance, or decals, depending on, you know, where you're from. They would load in very slowly. Like in the police station or the fire station, it would take like almost 20 seconds to load in some of the major details. Yeah. And then you turn around, leave the room, and come back, and it would be the blurry one again, and you'd have to wait. And it happened all over the game. It was everywhere. That seems to be fixed, which is great.
Okay.
The textures actually load in correctly as they should. And the same for the shadows. Like in the original, they were so noisy and messy and low res that it was actually like just distracting to have them enabled at all.
Mm-hmm.
And now they seem to be much more solid and stable and beautiful, and they seem to have completely fixed that problem as well.
I mean, that was like, to me, it was one of the core issues where I knew from other Unreal Engine 4 games that this is not something endemic to the engine, and it was just whatever they were doing.
Certainly not.
So to me, that just was like another one of the signs, much like the texture one, that the game was just launched unfinished. And but it's good to see it being finished to some degree now.
So again, I need to sit down and play more of this again, but it does seem like they basically went back and fixed basically every complaint that I raised in my original video. The big test that I haven't really dug into yet myself is the AI, because that was another thing I sort of picked up on, is the AI was really bad and broken in the original version, and I'm hoping that's fixed. I also see that they added an actual dedicated stealth kill animation. Which
I'm take it or leave it, like, because I actually do like old games and their little bit of jankiness without the stealth kill, because it makes stealth a little bit less binary, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it just didn't work well.
It didn't. Well,
it didn't. That's the problem. Alex, the way you're talking, Alex, like Crysis 1 style.
Yeah, I'm talking about that.
The AI needs to be designed to work well with that style of play. In Redfall, it didn't work that way.
So
it would constantly trigger everybody in the area and just like break things all the time.
So,
it was bad.
You know how you showed in your video, as well as a lot of posts online, we're talking about how you could really easily avoid the attacks of the vampires by strafing, I think it was, side strafing, circle strafing. But I do know that they changed that actually in one of the interim updates in the meantime.
Oh, okay.
So now the attack swipe range, I think of them, is much more like they lock onto you much more instead of attacking within like a capsule in front of them.
That was pretty funny though.
Yeah, that was funny.
In the original case.
Well, you know, I've got some notes about this, and if we look at the original release date of the game, May the 2nd, and you know, today's date, we're well into October now. It's taken them over 5 months to actually get the game into a state which you might consider shippable, right? That is a massive amount of development resource that must have gone into it, assuming that the team is still fully working on the project as opposed to moving on to something else, or certain staff members moving on, whatever. And yeah, I do think obviously with the benefit of hindsight, it shouldn't have released in that state. And I'm still kind of shocked that it did, because, there weren't just technical issues, there were game issues as well. And I mean, what can you say? I mean, it just seemed supremely obvious that it shouldn't have shipped, but they kind of had to. And I'm just wondering now whether, I mean, there's this big problem now at the moment where, it really takes something special to actually turn around a game or a piece of hardware that released with incredibly bad reviews, right? And, because basically the way the internet works is that there's an established narrative now across all of the stuff that's out there. If you search for Redfall right now, it's not about the 60 FPS upgrade or the fact that the gameplay may or may not have been fixed. It's all about, it's all about how bad the game is. That's just like damning, really. And, you Google Redfall and the first thing you get is like a review. Google actually coughs up a review, 2.8 out of 5, and lots of issues about gameplay design, story, technical problems. It's just counterproductive to launch a game that is so obviously nerfed like this, that just wasn't ready, and I hope things turn around in time. But, they've almost got to restart from scratch at this point. They were talking about concurrence on Steam, meaning that you couldn't even get a multiplayer game together because they were so low. How do you turn that around? I mean, it starts by obviously doing what they've done, which is to actually finish the game, seemingly. But, I just wonder whether the momentum's just completely gone. And, if they did need to wait until next year to put it out, then I guess that would have been the preferred solution with the benefit of hindsight. Because you're quite right, John. Right now, there's just too many games competing for attention, and Redfall just wouldn't stand a chance, especially when, Starfield has shipped, Forza Motorsport's just come out. Crazy stuff.
They had a great release date. Like, if it had actually been as it is right now at release date, it would have made such a huge difference, right? Because there was not much else during that time period. And there was a lot of hype for Redfall.
Yeah.
I remember seeing all those preview videos, people flown out to the Redfall event. There was some very excited fans ready to play Redfall.
Yeah.
But then,
I mean, the seeds of it all started when they had so much 60 frames per second media marketing the game, and then the game
and
comes out
it had
with
60
FPS
frames per second on the back of the box.
Yes.
Gosh.
They just put like a sticker over it.
Yeah, my word.
Like,
it's just like a little.
Imagine that meeting, right? Like, imagine being in that meeting where it's like,
we gotta buy
we already
a sticker.
Manufactured these. We've got to take them all back and put stickers over the 60 FPS thing.
Oy,
Man.
oy.
Yeah, so basically, Alex's CPU footage basically shows that the game just wasn't in an optimal state at that point to actually deliver 60 frames per second on like Zen 2 class hardware, and that would obviously move across to the consoles as well. And yet, the solution there was to peg it to 30 and ship, and then buy some stickers. That's, just goes to show the sort of crisis level, sort of management that was going on there. That was
Crisis with an I.
Not the good crisis.
Not the good crisis. The bad kind.
Yeah. So, I really feel for Arcane, and hopefully this is the start of turning things around. But, building up momentum, putting out this patch, we were talking about the fact that you shouldn't really ship the game at this point, but putting out the patch when there's so much attention focused on other bigger games doesn't help its cause, though, does it?
No.
So I'm going to be interested to see how they choose to market it. And how to sort of, rekindle interest in it. I mean, we're doing our bit by talking about how they've improved it. But fingers crossed there's more going on there to actually get more interest in the game. And also, as you say, John, we've still got to actually play it and figure out whether it's still worth playing beyond the technical issues, right?
Yeah.